Welcome to the Pacesetter Pod, where we explore and reveal the perspectives, insights, and approaches to deliver great results and growth in your agribusiness through better execution. Here's your host, the Integration Pacesetter, Joe Mosier.
Welcome, Pacesetters of Agribusiness, to another episode of the Pacesetter Pod. I'm your host, Joe Mosier. You may have noticed that we've been on a tear here with getting more conversations and perspectives with folks in the Agtech space on the show. And today's going to be an extension of that. I'm doing this for a couple of reasons. One, it's part of my own journey to better understand Agtech, the problems folks are working on, the challenges that they're facing, and also what the potential value unlock is for the ag value and supply chain overall. I think it'd be short-sighted and myopic to look only at traditional agribusiness operators as an example of what it takes to run a successful business, what strategy, execution, and action looks like, and how to continue to lead a thriving and prospering organization. Similarly, it'd be very myopic to only look at Agtech, the new market entrances, the folks that are looking to do some of the same work differently with new capabilities digitally enabled. I think that both need to work together to the betterment of agriculture and agribusiness. And as part of this show, I want to bring those perspectives forward. And I also want to help educate myself in the process. With that, I recently sat down with Kyle McMahon, who's the CEO of TractorZoom, to talk about his journey of creating a market-leading solution that connects data and better business and investment decisions for leaders, dealers, farm credit associations, farm service agencies, banks, auctioneers, and farmers. And what was interesting is this business was born not of observing a problem in the market, which is a pretty common story and the origin story for a lot of new organizations. It wasn't from observing a problem in the marketplace, rather it was from running directly face first into that problem as a market participant. It's a really cool story that you're going to enjoy from Kyle. One of the things that I appreciate about Kyle that you'll hear in this episode is the convergence of very deep curiosity, a lot of intellectual agility and rigor, and also a diverse background that, from my perspective, helps him see opportunities to unlock value that others might just miss. Which is a very important characteristic for anyone that's leading an agribusiness, with the learning and change agility that you need to survive and thrive as our industry rapidly evolves. So in our conversation today, a few of the things you're going to hear about is the value of getting into a customer's workflow to streamline and aggregate all the pre-existing but perhaps unmanaged data that's already there, and repackaging it in a way that creates efficiency and utility for the business. Talking about creating a business that can monetize services and adapt as both your direct customers, in the case of TractorZoom, equipment dealers, but also indirect customers, the growers that buy and use the equipment, how you can build this business that can adapt as those two groups continue to consolidate and also level up their own business sophistication and expectations of their technology partners. And also we're going to hear from Kyle, something that I've also often thought about is how do you manage that tension between listening to the market and then strategically iterating in response to those signals the market gives you, while also having the discipline to develop a comprehensive and rigorous product roadmap and then execute against it. Both are important. We hear both be celebrated in the media and in stories and success stories, but they might be hard to reconcile. So that's something that I posed to Kyle in today's episode. So this is another great episode with a thoughtful leader in agriculture. And let's jump over to my conversation with Kyle McMahon of TractorZoom. Kyle, great to see you today. Welcome to the Pacesetter Pod.
Thanks, Joe. Super excited to be here and see what we get into.
And yeah, a lot of stuff to cover. So let's start off. You've done a number of podcasts before. It's a company that's well known to many. But for folks that maybe haven't been following the TractorZoom story, talk to us about who TractorZoom is, the value proposition, the problem you solve, and who your customers are, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And really who we are to the core is we help leaders in agriculture make better decisions with data. And we serve equipment dealers. So we build technology for heavy equipment dealers and agriculture equipment dealers to sell the equipment faster and more profitably. Ultimately, a dealer is on the sales side. They are selling tractors. They are an inventory-based business model. right? So we help them make faster, better decisions using our data and streamlined workflows, ultimately helping them sell faster with higher margins and maintaining their business inside their AOR, because these dealers are getting very large and they just need better, more sophisticated technology in order to operate these large dealerships that they're running.
Because those large dealerships also often involve larger trades on multiple units of equipment at a time. Is that one of the problems to solve?
Yeah. And, as these dealer groups continue to get larger, there's some dealers that have 30 to 70 stores, right? And so as their businesses matured, they now need better technology and insights into their own sales funnel and how the business is operating so they can make the correct decisions, right? And so as markets can shift really quickly, what we really excel at is real-time data, helping these dealers value machinery using our proprietary data set in real time. So if commodity prices drop, that's going to influence machinery values, but then also understanding and having insights into their inventory. There's some dealers right now that are sitting on $250 million of machines, of inventory, right? That they're paying a lot of carrying cost, insurance, they're financing that inventory. It's very, very expensive. So we need to give them the right insights into their inventory set on profitability and when and how fast can they sell those assets when they have them in stock. So we're all about helping them find those next sales opportunities inside their sales funnel. And today we have about 6,000 equipment salespeople that use our tech on a daily basis. I personally just bought a skid loader for my own farm, and I had the Van Wall equipment salesperson stop in and sign paperwork not but 15 minutes ago. And so it's super cool listening to the sales folks, how our technology has transformed what they do. We're replacing the pen and paper, although we did sign on paper. Well, we do have e-sign capabilities, but he wanted to come in and meet me, which I thought was awesome, build a relationship. Point being is we can streamline the salesperson's workflow. So now they can just focus on selling and not being an administrator from a paperwork standpoint. So everything from CRM to quoting technology to sales workflow and settlement, that entire process and integrating the workflow for that dealership. Salespeople used to log into 6 systems until we started building technology that we have. And that's just a very inefficient duplication of data mess that we've been able to replace, refine, and make more transparent for these dealership leaders.
So I'm going to betray my ignorance here on just the ag equipment sales space generally, but I would presume that a technology solution such as Tractor Zoom also expands the geographic range in which visibility to demand and then providing inventory to meet that demand is available. Is that in fact true? And how has that played out?
Yeah. So, one thing that we do have is a online search engine. And today, to my knowledge, we're still the only and the largest search engine for heavy equipment being sold at auction. So that's one of our biggest core value propositions when farmers are looking for inventory that's selling at auction. They just go to tractorzoom.com and search for that type of inventory across 825 auction companies. That's coming down the line. They can also get alerts from that, right? So if I'm busy running my business or farming and I'm looking for this 333G skid loader that I actually just bought, I can set an alert on Tractor Zoom and I can be notified any radius across the United States that I want to look at based on my parameters. It will shoot me a text message or an email saying, hey, there's new inventory on the market, go check it out. So that definitely increases the speed and ability of a farmer searching for equipment. Now, as a buyer, I know where the equipment is located. And then for these dealers, we do give them the opportunity to market globally, right? It's the internet. But the other cool thing that we haven't been outspoken about yet, and I'll just briefly touch on it, is the ability to use AI, artificial intelligence, to help salespeople sell equipment faster. There's a lot of data that's available that we have access to that we can serve leads up to the sales folks saying, you should, instead of calling on the same farmer stand that you always have, there are a lot of other prospects out in the market that we really encourage you to call with the inventory that you have right now, right? So we can start to expedite. The whole mindset is how can we take inventory turnover rate at these dealerships from, for example, from 2 to 3 times or 3 to 4 times, right? Those are huge shifts in sales, just in revenue that for these dealerships, and which is obviously needed in today's more challenging environment.
So visibility into a greater number of auction venues and auction channels is obviously value add. More visibility into real-time availability of what's out there. To what degree, Kyle, is there pricing spreads of similar equipment in different geographies across the country? Is it largely at parity? And the reason I ask, I think about this. A friend of mine a number of years ago was looking for a certain make and model of a vehicle, found it in his hometown in the Twin Cities, got the dealer to the best available price that they would offer, found the same make and model, similar mileage, similar same features, etc., down in the Phoenix area, and it was significantly cheaper. And he said, well, it's only cost me $300 on Southwest to fly down and pick up the car. I'll save myself $5,000 driving down and, flying down and driving it back. And so there was huge price dislocation between the Southwest and the Great Lakes states. Is that something you see also playing out in ag equipment, or not so much?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say it used to be larger. The gap has narrowed, particularly with the popularity in online bidding. For example, just last summer, I was bidding on a tractor that I wanted. It was low hour. I knew it was pretty limited risk, but it was selling for significantly cheaper than what I could buy it for here in the Midwest. Bought it, spent $1,500 and shipped it in, right? So the cost of shipping still saved me thousands of dollars just paying that extra cost of shipping it in. That does exist. The gap is narrowing just because of the internet and online bidding.
Sure.
The thing I'll say that probably is the biggest gap is when machines are located in different geographies, a lot of times they'll have different options on them that maybe a farmer in Iowa doesn't need or needs, one or the other, to a tractor in North Carolina, let's say. It's just going to be spec'd a little bit differently versus the crops that we're growing here. So that's one challenge. And then the other one is when you start to look at, for example, equipment in the northern half of the United States, let's just say Iowa, Illinois, Wisconsin, Minnesota, the Dakotas, those machines are much more well taken care of just based on our farming, the way we take care of equipment. We all have cold storage. We all store our machinery inside versus if you go down south, especially by the ocean, a lot of the equipment just sits outside. The salt in the air from the ocean will deteriorate those machines. And so there can be a quality difference, especially as you start to get aged machinery. So that's where you start to see the biggest gap in pricing is when they're spec'd just differently than the rest of the market. It's too specialty, or the machines in other geographies will just weather so much more. So you have to take that condition into effect or into account when you're looking at that.
But it does prove out in one of the aspects that the technology and the solution is needed. If despite geography, specs being held equal, if different geographies over time, once you include the cost of shipping and delivery, if the spread compresses to the point where it gets to parity, as you made the point that it used to be a wider wider spread than it is now. That is price discovery at work. That's a market at work. And so it's clearly working. People are participating in it. Let's take a step back a bit. I'm interested to share with viewers your background. So you are farming now, as you said, or on the farm, but you got a different kind of background. So I'd love for you to share maybe the cliff notes on the story of Kyle, the Kyle 101, and then ultimately how it brought you to where you're at with Tractor Zoom.
Well, I'd say 2 genetic traits that I probably have are just a can-do, want to figure it out mentality and attitude. Because everything I'm doing now, I just have to figure it out, right? Trial by fire, learn it. And then the other one is just pure curiosity and growth. So it's like when I talk about those 2 things, I grew up in Fairfield, Iowa, southeast Iowa. Folks are in manufacturing business, so they were not farmers. I didn't grow up on a farm. All my friends farmed, right? I could drive equipment. But I wanted to either play competitive golf or become a landscape architect. And I went to school, absolutely hated landscape architecture, but I met the right people and I had curiosity. Ended up working for a farmland private equity group right out of college, And it's just totally transformed what I thought I could do and opened up the world to me. You know, I was kind of a young pup 15 years ago. And I fell in love with agriculture. Absolutely had a blast in farmland private equity. I would drive 100 to 120,000 miles a year, going to farmland auctions, meeting real estate brokers, attorneys, bankers, whatever I could to drum up farmland deals in Iowa, Illinois, Minnesota. So I just pounded the pavement and built some really, really awesome relationships with people in agriculture. And then ultimately I said, well, hell, I might as well start farming as a side hustle, right? I'm still young. I can go figure it out. And that's really what started Tractor Zoom is I was going to start farming as a side hustle. Dad had 30 acres that he'd let me rent. And if I could prove it out in those first 30 acres, it would be something I would try to figure out how to do it to a larger scale, right? Becoming a first generation farmer, I guess you could say. Dad called me nuts, crazy, every name in the book, don't do it. And I just was curious, wanted to go do it. So as soon as I started looking for equipment, right, it's a whole investment and data mindset. I was coming from professional private equity where we're using a large amount of data to make the best investment decision possible for our LPs, right, to drive the best return. When it came time for me to buy equipment, I had no idea what to pay for equipment. There was no good data in the market. And I was actually looking for this specific planter called a Kinsey 3600, 12-row planter. That's what I had my mindset on. But online at Tractor House, they were listed for $30,000 to $130,000. That's a huge buy-sell spread, right? Like, what am I supposed to pay? So the curiosity kicked in and kind of came to the conclusion of, man, we need to build Kelley Blue Book for the heavy equipment market. And so, there are already people doing it, but I saw a different way and a different path and a much more streamlined path. So we embarked on the journey to create the Kelley Blue Book valuation system of our industry. And today have 1,400 dealer stores and 70 different banks that use our data to value machinery, which is really neat. And then, I'm sure we'll get to this. It came time of, okay, what's next? How do we take this business to the next level? We had raised some venture capital and saw other opportunities to really become vertical software in our market, right? And that's where, here about 3 years ago, it was, okay, here's how we can drive serious value for our customers, for agriculture, but then there's big opportunities outside of ag that we can chase. There's other ways that we can monetize the business and continue to deliver results back to our clients that we really, really grounded ourselves in the fact of listening to the customer will help us drive innovation and drive product, because I wasn't a farmer. I wasn't a dealer. I wasn't a big machinery buyer. So it's always just been ingrained in our culture to listen to the market, listen to our customers, and figure out what are the biggest pain points, what are the biggest gaps, and how can we fill them. And meanwhile, the other systems, our competitors, I guess you could call it, they've just been doing the same thing with very little innovation and just cutthroat business models for 25 years, right? So let's just be easy to do business with. Let's listen to real pain, deliver meaningful value to the customers, and the customers will help us take us where they need us to go.
Yeah. Well, and as you tell it, what I'm thinking here is you, in many ways, you stepped into obviously the gap in the market. So you needed price transparency, you needed some pricing expectations, data on equipment availability, a place to aggregate all the different channels by which that equipment could become available, et cetera. So you could say you stepped into a workflow, but you almost created the workflow by pulling those things together. And I know in hearing you speak at events and in our earlier conversations, one of the things that you said that really hit me was something to the effect of, this is not verbatim, but data is nice, but the value unlock is getting into the workflow. And so as
Absolutely.
We kind of step back a little bit, what I think is interesting about that statement is that it somewhat de-emphasizes the product that you're going to build or ship. And it, as compared to the focusing on the placement of the product or solution within that larger work environment of your target customer. Can you unpack maybe that philosophy or that mindset a bit for us? And what do you mean by unlocking value by getting into the workflow?
Yeah. I would not have known that if we didn't build meaningful relationships with our customers and users of our technology and just listen to them, right? I thought we were creating the coolest whiz-bang technology, helping everybody understand supply and demand and deep machinery analytics and where markets are headed, what's been going on, where are we predicting the future, like really deep, serious supply-demand analytics on the machinery market and pricing and elasticity. But then kind of sat back and said, well, it's only being used by the used equipment manager. For example, it could be a 30 location dealer that sells $1 billion. They do $1 billion in revenue a year. Well, we've got really one champion in there, right? And that one person is the only one finding serious value in our technology. Now I know that used equipment manager might be the one approving every trade in at the dealer. It makes a ton of sense from a business standpoint as a dealer. Have centralized valuations, very consistent. You can control the environment and your pricing. But where we saw it become even more valuable is that, frankly, a customer called us and said, I love your data and I want it in a CRM. And we said, oh, interesting. Let's take a look at it. We did the integration for them, and then we did it for 7 more John Deere and Case IH stores and said, or they came back to us and said, holy smokes, this is powerful, right? So I actually went on a journey to figure out how to buy that company that we ended up partnering with from an integration standpoint. But when you can see that this is very valuable data only being used by one person, but when you put it inside the workflow, not only you're streamlining their workflow, they don't have to log into any other system, but now systems will start to integrate so you can deliver more automated processes back to the customer. And then what that ultimately does is it's starting to educate all of the salespeople that are inside there, not just one used equipment manager. So now we're delivering downstream effects from a pricing perspective. The salespeople, these dealerships are starting to learn what's going on in the machinery market for pricing, how's the OEM thinking about it, what's going on in quoting. So that more fully integrated approach was, how we could take this to the next level, because now it's a whole other subset of data we can use inside of the velocity of a dealership.
Poorly executed mergers and acquisitions destroy more value than they create. They can set your company back years. To defend your firm's position in the marketplace, you need access to the leading practices that unlock the greater potential of your people, processes, and systems. If you are undertaking a company transformation or pursuing an acquisition as a vehicle to grow, set up a call with Joe by visiting www.moshercg.com.
Individual buyers are also accessing this marketplace of data to at least be able to search for available equipment and purchase, and not so much for inventory management, supply and demand forecasting, et cetera. But
yeah.
So OEMs, I imagine, are leveraging it to some degree to monitor the value of their used equipment stock that's out there. Individual buyers, but then you said the heart of it really is those equipment dealerships.
Yeah, all roads really come back to the dealership, right? When you look at the whole value chain of the machinery market. So I'm sure OEMs might say this a little differently, and dealers would say this a little bit differently, and I know farmers would say this a little bit differently. But the way that I see kind of the value chain working is an OEM is really good at manufacturing machinery. Now they have to really rely on their dealers to sell machinery, right? If they ever expect to hit their sales goals that they tell Wall Street, almost all of them are publicly traded, they need their dealers to operate very well and have an understanding what's going on. That's why they're all driven by market share. As long as they're hitting market share goals, that market share goals mean the OEMs hitting their new goals as well and their sales goals. And then the farmer is all about how do they get the right machine for their area. So there's this entire value chain throughout that all roads come back to the service and quality that the farmer gets through the dealer. If the dealer can properly service their market, their customers, the farmer, that farmer is most likely going to continue doing business with that dealer, even if they're a little bit more expensive than maybe a dealer 20 miles down the road. And when that happens, the OEM continues to deliver new machinery into that market, which is great for market share, revenue on all fronts. So really, when we think about that value chain, there's a lot of pressure on these dealers to perform. And there's a there's a lot of finger pointing when it comes to the farmer or the OEM, and that dealer has to figure out how to operate, and they need the best tools that they can to be successful, whether it's pressure coming from the OEM or pressure coming from their customers.
It's interesting. I would have assumed perhaps that greater visibility to purchasing options of used equipment around the country available to an individual farmer might have disintermediated that local relationship, right? Because if that local dealer is more expensive, they can still buy it somewhere else but have it serviced locally. But what you just said is that relationship still has some stickiness there, and that they may still transact with the dealer, who on the back end, of course, is going to use TractorZoom to source used equipment to meet local needs. So it has not necessarily disrupted in a meaningful way those local dealer to grower relationships.
No, I'd say no. The other thing to really, I'd say, take into account here is you think about those relationships, is it's all about service in the field at go time, right? Mm-hmm. If I buy a tractor from a different dealer, even if it's the same color green, right, I might not get the right service. And so I think that's always the fear of the farmer, is I need to continue doing business with that dealer. But it's also that dealer needs to be supporting that farmer in a lot of the decisions. It needs to be as their thought leader from the equipment space. But farmers are continually doing a lot more research, and they're a very, very educated buyer. They know what they need when it comes time to finding the next machine. So they're already set on what they need next. And then the piece that they have is always worth more than everybody else's. That's just the way a farmer is, right? Like, I've always taken care of it more than anybody else. Like, mine deserves top dollar. So we had that same fear that you just spoke about of we're providing price discovery and price transparency to the market. I honestly was fearful that the dealer wasn't going to like us, because we were showing real prices, and what I thought was eliminating negotiating power for the dealer. What actually happened, Joe, was the dealer said, thank you for providing that transparency, because we're using you as the bad guy on actually humbling somebody what the machine's worth. Maybe, if it's a tractor that the customer thinks is worth $150,000 coming into a trade, and they're trying to upgrade to a $200,000 tractor, right? The customer's coming in thinking it's a $50,000 trade difference when really the pricing of that might be $120,000, right? So they can use us as the bad guy and still maintain the relationship with the customer.
Fascinating. So you talked about how obviously the dealers are under a lot of pressure to maintain market share and to move units. That's on the front end of the value chain. They move the units, then they subsequently serve the units, provide a point of trade and resale, right? So they participate in those two or three key elements. As we look at broad consolidation of farms and this big transfer of farmland and wealth and lack of succession planning that's going to, I believe, drive significant farm consolidation in the next 5 to 10 years. Concurrent with, we also know that across all the different OEMs, there is pressure to consolidate their dealer network. Some are more advanced than others. We've had folks on from Deere and from AGCO, and so they're all at a different stage of maturity in that process. But what is universally true is they are advocating towards consolidation, having bigger counterparties. What does consolidation, both for the farm as well as for the dealer network, what does that mean for TractorZoom? How do you think about that in terms of risk or opportunity?
Well, so we think about if we talk about the dealer first, we set up our business model for M&A. Like we know that's going on the market. We need to make sure we set up our business appropriately to withstand the M&A that goes on in the market and the consolidation. So I think that's vital. Number one, that will allow us to continue providing best-in-class support back to our customers as they transition. For example, this morning, a dealer called us and said, "Hey, I bought another location." They called us 3 weeks ago, said they bought a location. Called us this morning, said they bought a location, and we can get that new location up online in our technology and their users online very quickly. So we know that happens, and so we make sure we set up our business to handle that and provide really good support during those transition times, because anytime you go through M&A, the last thing you want to have be an issue is the technology. right? There's the whole people and culture things that people need to pay the most attention to. So it's not going to change our business necessarily as they continue to consolidate, other than the fact is the bigger, more sophisticated dealers are going to press us even more and more and more on innovation, which we love, right? As they get bigger, said this a lot publicly, like what got you here won't get you there. They have to continue to level up, and they're going to need more sophisticated technology, and we're here to support them. From the farmer side, we still have roughly the same amount of acres, the same amount of machines are running those same amount of acres. So it doesn't change our business necessarily. Maybe there will be more mud deals, multi-unit discount, bigger transactions that happen. And so our quoting technology needs to handle that, and it does, and it can. I get the question a lot of, well, what about drones? What about autonomy? Like, how does that change your business? And ultimately, it doesn't. We're just dealing with quoting something new and quoting something that's used, and then realizing what customers are out there for those types of assets that are on that kind of repeat buying habit history that we have to continue to support. So where the dealer sells, we can support from a SKU standpoint inside the technology, allowing them to quote it and close it just as quickly as a 1 store to a 30 store location dealer group.
And is the business monetized in terms of a licensing sort of per licensee, per seat type model, or is it actually monetized basis on units that are moved through the network, sold through the network? Because I would imagine that as units consolidate and these bigger organizations become more efficient around who's actually using the technology, who's managing the workflows. If you were monetized on a licensing basis, you could see your revenue significantly contract and compress based on fewer users moving larger amounts of equipment.
Right. Yeah. So it is the former. So our business is a software as a service subscription model based on the value that the customer's getting out of it. We don't have a transaction fee that we take today. So it's not about the amount of machines that they move. It's all on, you think of users, the number of locations that you have as we think about value creation for them. But, I will say that as we think about continuing to push the needle from a technology and advancement standpoint, we can continue delivering better technology that helps them sell it faster so they have less inventory at one time, which is huge for a dealer, right? It's an inventory business model. If you can turn inventory faster and you're making 10% margin every time you turn inventory, we can do that 3 times instead of 2 times. Like, we just increased your revenue and by 50% and doubled your profit, right? Those are the type of metrics that we're trying to hit. And if we're performing, they're going to keep pressing us, and we're going to keep building really revolutionary technology that takes their business to the next level. We just signed on a 29 store John Deere dealer down in the Southeast on Friday. So big win for us. They have 650 employees. Literally, after we signed that contract with this new customer, they came to us and said, we are seriously looking forward to partnering with you to help us take our dealership to the next level, because they're in their other 20 group meetings and they watch other Deere dealers be really successful on their sales marketing side inside of our technology. And they want to see and reap the reward to that.
So the structure then also, I imagine, would fortify you against, the down cycle that we're in now, where we would anticipate growers holding on to their equipment for a few more years. We know the OEMs are not moving as many units as they were 3 or 4 years ago. So a decline in the trade activity in a given season is a temporary headwind that you can then weather. That's not a meaningful impact to the short-term results of the organization.
Yeah, over the last 18 months, dealer inventory is up 40%, and turn rates, how quickly and frequently does a dealer turn their inventory, has gone from 3 down to 2.1. Wow. So those are serious numbers. They sound like small numbers, but 40% increase in inventory. Turn rate is down 33%, roughly 30%. And then you have interest rates that are still high, and people have to pay carrying costs and interest costs, P&I payments on their inventory, right? So it makes it really challenging for a dealer when farmers say, hey, you know what, during the COVID years, bought all the new stuff I needed. I can run it for a couple of years and buy parts. And I can choose when I want to upgrade a machine. I don't need to do it this year. Right? That makes it very challenging for a dealer to figure out, how do you find new opportunities to sell the inventory you have Additionally, what inventory should you not be taking in on trade? You don't want to get more combines. You don't need more 333G skid loaders. Like, there's a surplus of inventory, and we provide deep analytics on this where we can help a dealer understand the supply and demand of the market. So as you're seeing these graphs trend over time of supply continue to rise and the units in the market that get taken off the market as in they're sold, that's not moving. That's an issue, right? You're now like every other dealer out there that has that same piece of inventory. There's nothing advantageous about you just doing a deal that take in more trades when you're never actually washing out of that equity from a cash flow perspective of the dealer, right? You just need, what dealers love right now is somebody coming in and paying a fair price and paying cash or financing it without a trade, because a trade means they still have inventory.
That's right. So congratulations on signing the new dealership in the Southeast just here a few days ago. And you talked about, how they're looking to you to help take their business to the next level from a technology perspective. You've talked about the pressure from the positive pressure, let's say, from your customers, your dealer customers that are in fact growing and becoming more sophisticated and reaching scale and looking for new and different things from you. So with that, I do want to get your opinion on what I perceive as a conflict, or maybe it's a paradox that plays out a lot when we look at articles and adverts and announcements and everything surrounding innovation and ag tech. And that's that, you hear about there's a need for constant iteration to follow what the customer is telling you, listen to what the customer is telling you, follow the market to help unlock opportunities, right? It's that agility, that learning agility. It's changing, iterating. One of the values of actually being in a software business, right, is you can test and then push to production your updates and play them out in the real world very quickly. Simultaneously, we also see that there's a lot of demands, particularly from some larger customers, to have the clarity of the future of the solution in the form of a product roadmap. So you have some folks wanting, what is the roadmap? What are the features, benefits? What are you going to be building in the future? As well as, can you stay agile and do things in 18 months that you can't predict today? What is your thoughts on it? Is that real or just a perceived challenge that I'm picking up on? And if it is real, how do you manage that in an organization like FactorZone?
So you highlight the downfall of being very customer centric. We're an innovative startup that can move quickly, that does move quickly, but we also need to be, as a business, we need to be doing things for the greater industry and not one-off for a customer. We can't be feature freaks where one customer calls in and says, I love your technology, but it needs this one button, or it needs this less than 1% of our technology needs changed, right? We can do those things, but it really starts to bog down the progress. It's why progress over perfection, right? I really firmly believe that our customer base that's partnering with us, they're partnering us because we can continue to deliver innovation and solve their future pain longer term, not just for the technology we have today. If they want more robust ERP systems, there's a place for that, right? But you're not going to get any innovation over there. So they're partnering with us because they see the future of where we're going, and we sell that. We tell them where we're headed and how we're making these investments and why we are agile. But then we have to really caution the market when they say, that's awesome, and then we'll sign on, and then can you go build these like 4 other things for me and just be feature freaks? Like, that's where it really gets challenging. And so what we really operate on is what we call a 90-90 rule, where we can tell the market, in the next 90 days, we're delivering these features or products with 90% certainty. Our roadmap can change, right? So it can change very fast. If there's a really big opportunity we may need to focus on, or this product we got in has a little bit longer tail than what we thought it was, right? It should change the roadmap. No different than building a car from scratch, right? It just takes time. And so we really try to operate on that 90-90, and we'll continue to tell the market, hey, look at these other features we've delivered. Look at these other products we've delivered. I know it's not your thing that you're asking for me right now, but I promise, Lord, we'll get to it. Or we'll solve your pain another way. But we won't go anywhere if we just solve onesie-twosie things around. We just turn into a custom dev shop and That's not what the market needs.
And an unbearable tech stack of solutions and features that, how do you ever actually keep that going, right? That's one of the reasons that many of the incumbents across agribusiness have moved off of proprietary software that got built over decades.
Yeah.
As opposed to saying, let's let solution providers in the marketplace who do their particular thing very, very well have the API so it integrates with other technologies. Let's leverage those, standardize our workflows such that someone else is constantly investing in the innovation and the upgrades and the management of the software, and we simply benefit from those ongoing upgrades.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we just inherently move really quickly. So the technology we have today won't be the technology we have next quarter. We have some really transformational, I'd say we have 4 really transformational products that will take the market, 2 of which will be, new paid features, products that allow a dealership to operate even in a greater scale. And the other 2 really big things we're pushing to market this year will be enhancements to our current tech that levels up everybody.
Well, that's kind of an interesting place to maybe for us to start to bring this to a close, Kyle. So to the extent that you can, now my next question was going to be, what are you working on now at Tractor Zoom and what should the market be excited about? I'm not sure if you are in a place to be able to disclose those today or provide some teasers, but I'd love to hear what you guys are working on right now.
I think it's a lot like the rest of the globe, right? How do we think about AI? How do we think about data? How do we think about using that to the best ability? We are a data company at heart, and we have a ton of data within our database. And then our customers own their data inside their CRM, and they have a lot of data that they want us to use to deliver better products. So we're super encouraged about thinking about what I can say, and we'll spoil all the beans here. But what I can say is we're going to be using data helping dealers sell faster. That's what they need. And when they're selling faster, they're delivering a better experience to that farmer or customer. So it's very advantageous that we deliver a great experience to the dealer so they can pass that experience on to the customer. It's a great downstream effect that we can offer. The ability to quote a lot of different OEMs is going to be a really exciting spot to be in, and then helping dealers navigate that through quoting. I'd say and quoting seems like an easy piece, but when you think about these machines that come in every flavor, every option, I was actually just listening to a podcast this morning where somebody from CNH, Case IH said their Magnum tractor can come in over 100,000 variations. If you think of every bell and whistle and option you can add on them, right? Quoting is very complex. And when these dealers carry 20 different short lines, it becomes even greater mess. So what happens with that is the data within the quotes and close rates and sales cycles, all of that data is all over the place and nobody knows what to do with it. We can bring that into one spot, helping management and leadership understand what is the health of their sales organization? What's the pipeline? What do we expect to close? What are close rates? Like normal sales pipeline, if you think about SaaS sales, like we're trying to bring that sales strategy and education to our market. And then when you pair that with helping them sell faster using AI models, that's where it starts to get really encouraging.
Fascinating. Is there, I imagine, parallel companies that do what you do in the heavy construction industry type space or in turf and garden, or is this actually is there a lot of lateral opportunity for Tractor Zoom as well as you think about the future?
Yeah, definitely a lateral opportunity. There are legacy systems out there that do similar activities. Naturally, I'm selfish and bullish on ourselves that
sure
we'll just continue to provide better technology. I'd say we can go a step further. So there's a company called Cox Automotive in the automotive space, right? We can learn a lot from the auto space, the real estate space, hedge funds. Like there's a lot of other outside of our industry things that can influence and impact what we do. For example, the Cox Automotive is a privately held company doing almost $10 billion in revenue and has 40,000 employees. They've vertically integrated the entire auto space, right? Now, if you start to think about, okay, what happens when you start to take data, integrate systems within the heavy machinery space, ag and construction, it starts to get really exciting. And that's, frankly, the story that we've told our market, and that's, where we're headed.
Exciting future. I look forward to seeing these new results and features and products being pushed here in the next several quarters, whatever that release cycle looks like. But Kyle, I want to just say thank you very much for taking the time today to join us. It's a fascinating company. It's a very different use case and leg of the supply chain than we often talk to. So a lot of learning here. I think a lot of benefit for our listeners.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. And I'm really excited about the end of 25 and what happens in 26 in agriculture as a whole, whether I'm a farmer or in the software world. I just think there's a lot of opportunities to continue to drive innovation, even though it's a little bit more challenging right now. That I think the future is bright as we start to think about how to leverage technology and really make an impact in agriculture and the heavy machinery market. So just excited to keep pushing on.
Absolutely. It's always up and to the right, depending on your time frame.
Exactly. Joe, thanks for having me on and really appreciate your podcast. You put on a good one.
Hey, thank you very much. Thanks for being a part of it. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Pacesetter Pod. A very quick reminder to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. And to continue the conversation, you can find me on LinkedIn or check out the links in the show notes to set up a call directly. Look forward to having you join us right here again on the Pacesetter Pod.
This is the podcastfactory.com.